Hey there, it's Shannon. Welcome to Goodnight, a podcast where I say goodnight to people who have no one to say goodnight to. How was your day today? I hope it was good. This afternoon, I got to visit with my 96-year-old landlord, Chris. We laughed, and I love spending time with her. Life always seems brighter after spending time with her, and I am so grateful that she's in my life. Well, tonight's episode is called The Land. When I speak of the land, I'm talking about the 12-acre property that used to be a junkyard on the backside of a mountain outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. This 12 acres was the final piece of what used to be 100 acres of a family plot, and had dwindled down over the years to the one remaining family member, and we bought it from him. And so for this episode, I want to tell you about the actual land itself, not so much what we did on it or anything like that. So the land is broken up into three sections. There's the road front, the pasture, and the woods. So the road front is a rectangular shape about 2 acres. And the short end of the rectangle is along the road front, and I wanted to say that was about 400 feet wide along the road. There was a U-shaped driveway that the sides of the U were on both ends of that road front, and then it curved around in front of our house that we built. On the left side of that road front was our 1 acre, let's say a half an acre of an orchard. We planted a wide variety of apple trees, a couple of plum trees, cherry trees, pear trees, and they need to be able to cross-pollinate or pollinate. So we did have to have more than one of each kind. And then like with apples, we had Gala and Pink Ladies, and I want to say one other kind, and we had 4 of each kind for early, mid, and late blooming. Besides the trees, we also had a huge berry patch with early, mid, and late blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries. And then I also had some golden raspberry bushes in honor of Grandpa Joe. Also in this road front section of the property was my garden. I am not an experienced gardener, although both of my grandparents on both sides, were great gardeners. Flowers, fruits, vegetables, trees. And so I was hoping there was something in my blood, and I'm a Taurus, so, earth sign, want to grow things and nurture them. And so I tried the Back to Eden gardening method, where you put down cardboard and newspaper, kind of like kill the grass, and then you put wood chips or like untreated wood chips. So we got a wood chipper, and there was lots of trees and brush and everything like that on our property. So we would, chip our own branches and things like that. And then also we found the tree trimming company. It was very busy on a mountain, on a forest-lined mountain in Tennessee. And so I'd flag them down and say, hey, do you need a place to dump your wood chips? And they'd follow me and dump it. So the U-shaped driveway worked really well for that, where they could just pull in, dump it, and, just continue on. So I was very, very happy about that. So that was my Back to Eden garden, and it was not very big. I'm just a beginner. And I started out my first year, because we were there 5 years, my first season, I thought, okay, if I could grow peas, then that would be really something. And then when the peas grew, I think in that was zone 7B, you plant your peas in March. So I planted my peas and they came up, and I was feeling really, really good about that. The second season, I said, okay, if I can grow beets, all right, that's really something. So, because I love the smell of beets. They're just so earthy, and I love the color and the flavor. I know. I think it's old German blood, but So the beets grew really well there, and I was super happy about that. And then the third season, I thought, okay, if I could grow rainbow Swiss chard, like that's a little fancy, that's a little bit like not as hardy as peas or beets. And it grew. And I remember walking out in my rubber boots in the mornings out to my garden to pick the rainbow Swiss chard to go into my smoothies. And I thought that was really ballin', as my little sister Katie would say. That was pretty cool. Just a little swagger in my step going out to get that. And then the last season I was there, I thought if I could grow cucumbers, like that would be really something. And I did. And I remember Joe and my older boys were so pleased with my cucumbers. They would just pick them off the vine and eat them with this, like just brush there's no dirt because I had them climbing. But anyway, they just eat them with the skins on it. They were like goats. And they were so impressed with themselves, just eating cucumbers off the vine like real men. And I just, it was funny and very satisfying. I felt really in my feminine energy there that I had grown cucumbers for my men to eat. So, I was loving growing that, and it was the perfect spot on the land. It was just completely full sun. Back to eating gardening with the soil there was fantastic. So I loved it. The other things that grew really well there that were just beautiful, I had some Giants of California zinnias that were all multiple colors, and they grew really well. The honeysuckle, that was just growing wild there, and I just remember the smell of it. In the early summer, it just smelled so beautiful. And there's lots of black walnut trees there, and my kids loved, they're everywhere. And thankfully we had a lot of little kids so they could pick them all up. And when you're needing to mow, but then also my kids would do two things with the black walnuts. One, they would use them as baseballs and take limbs, fallen sticks, and hit the black walnuts as far as they could. And then secondly, they figured out how to crush them and soak them and make a stain out of it. And there was a lot of just random wood around. And my kids had this area called the pit next to the garage house. And they just dug holes, and they would collect rainwater and soak the black walnuts in it, and then take this old lumber that was just laying around the property, and they would stain it, and then they'd make forts and all this. They had a big time in the pit. And then when we built the big house, we had to build it right on top of the pit, and it was gone. And they were kind of sad about it. They missed it. So that is where that was the road front, that 2-acre section. That's where most of the bike riding and, all the fun things, fixing tractors and all the fun things happened there. And then the middle section of the property was the pasture, and that was about 5 acres of grass, and it sloped downwards towards the back of the property, towards the woods and the creek. There was one, and there's a barn in the center of the pasture that must have been built in the 1960s or something like that. It wasn't really a historic barn. That maybe was an original barn on the property, and it was full of rats and a lot of things. But anyway, we took that down after we'd been there a couple of years because we didn't have any animals at that time. And the grass was very green all around that area. Anyway, next to the barn was one big tree. There was one big tree in the middle of the pasture, this huge oak tree. My best guess is it was 75 years old or so. It was beautiful. It was so strong. And every place I live, I always have a favorite tree. And that was my favorite tree at that property. There was also a pond in the pasture, but it had a leak in the dam. So it drained down to the creek because, it was that whole pasture was on a downward slope. Very good for the calves if you're running up, and very good for riding a bike down really fast. But the pond, it didn't stay full, especially in the summer. And it didn't ever really get cold enough to ice skate on it or anything like that. However, it was great for tadpoles. And then there was one time a blue heron, or a heron of some kind. Maybe it wasn't blue. I don't know if there's different kinds. Forgive me, bird lovers. But there was a heron who hung out back by that pond once, and we all just sat in the windows and watched it. It was so beautiful and majestic. You know, I'd never seen one like in real life before. And so I was pretty proud of that. Another thing I loved about the pasture was the fog. In the mornings, you know, when the dew was still on the grass, there was this fog that would roll up from the creek, through the woods, through the pasture, and up to the road front section. And then as the sun came out and warmed up and the dew dried, the fog would like go back down to the, you know, go downwards as the morning went on, down back towards the creek. It was like its own tide. And it was just really beautiful. Just this like silent touch to the property, and I love that, and I kind of miss that. On the mountain, there was not many wide open spaces like this pasture, and so it's this like surprise and delight when you like drive by it, how it just opens up, and all this sunshine and wide open space. It was really, it was like a really happy surprise. And then it was when we moved into the garage house, and I remember standing outside the front door the first morning that we lived there, and standing outside, looking down at the pasture, and it was right then that I felt my soul go, and I didn't realize how much it resonated with me to have a wide open pasture like this. And in that moment, I remembered my middle name is Lee, which means of the meadow. And a pasture is very close to a meadow. And I don't know, it felt like home to be around that. And here now I'm at my landlord Chris's house, or at her cottage, Lizzie's cottage here, and I'm looking out on a pasture, and I feel like this little cottage with this view is like a sanctuary, or my heart just feels very peaceful here. And I just really love that. Well, the final section of the land is the woods, and the woods is about 5 acres of forest. It has the, pasture on the one side, and then there is a steep slope down to a small creek, and that was the back of our property line. When it rained a lot, we could hear the creek waters rushing all the way up at the house, and I always loved that. And there was this bamboo forest, we called it, down by the creek. It was very different than all the rest, and I can't remember what the locals called it. My kids called it the bamboo forest, and they like to play in there. I would have them go down there and cut the bamboo or whatever you call it for me, and I'd use them as stakes for my cucumbers to climb up, or I'd use them for the stakes at the ends when I'd plant. I'd put the stakes at both ends of the row of my carrots or peas or whatever like that, and then I'd do a string, and that way I didn't walk over them or the kids didn't walk on them after I planted them. But then once they shot up, I'd take the bamboos down and take the string down once you could see something was clearly growing there. So I really liked that bamboo forest. And of course they were used as swords and weapons and bats for the black walnuts. So we got a lot of use out of those. I was surprised they weren't used for more forts though, actually, now that I think of it. Oh boy. Let's see. And there was also a cave in the forest, which is, it was really just like an oversized rock outcropping, but 2 or 3 little children could, be in this little cave. And like, sometimes I would imagine, like, I wonder if like Cherokee, lived on this land, and maybe they would like go under there if there was a big storm that went through, or maybe they had a little campfire under there. I don't know. I guess my imagination would run loose, because in Michigan, where I grew up, is all flat farmland. There was like one hill in the town, so to see a cave was pretty big to me, even as an adult. Joe and the kids had a lot of fun creating a hiking trail in the forest from the pasture down to the creek. And since the slope was so steep, it had to be a zigzag pattern. And with that task, and they'd only do it in the winter time because there were copperhead snakes on our property. So we didn't really venture into the woods too much when in the hot summer months, but in the winter when they were dormant, they would do a lot of that hiking trail work. There's plenty to do at the other seasons, and no snake bite was worth it. So anyway, but in the winter, they would hack a trail with chainsaw and axe and, like a machete sort of a thing, and tree trimmers. So they all had something to do down there, and they'd have a fire going and burning the brush in the pasture. So yeah, they had a big time with that. And that's when our oldest son, Noah, who is like a gentle giant, he's just a very calm, sweet, really intelligent person, but he learned that he loves to cut down trees with an axe while we lived there. And he must have been like 14. Yeah, about 14 when we lived there. No, something like that. Yeah, he was a teenager, early teenager. Man, that was such a good use of his energy, and like he was strong. Like I think he surprised himself. And he just loved just hacking at the tree, with an axe, and became quite good at it, and really enjoyed sharpening his axe. And it was extremely focused and determined, and it really brought out this more like serious, powerful side of him. And any sort of demo cutting down trees, it brings out that side of him. And so we have so many good memories on that land. It was a lot of work. We had to work together a lot to keep the grass cut and to, trim trees and maintain the forest. And there was a lot of cleanup to do as well. But we were very close then. And it was a really sweet time in our family where we had to work as a team. And I writing about it earlier, writing the episode and now talking about it, I kind of miss it. And I haven't missed it since we left in 2021. So it's been 4 years since we've lived there. Life has been racing on, but now that I'm talking about it, I'm a little nostalgic. So, well, that's that story. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for that land. I know that you gave that to us, and the timing was perfect, and I am so grateful. Thank you for the good memories there. Lord, that place was so beautiful, and I'm so glad that we got to live there and to take care of that for 6 years. Lord, thank you for creating such a beautiful place and for setting it aside to us for that season. Lord, I pray for everyone listening tonight that you'd watch over them as they sleep and guard them as they dream, because you love them beyond measure. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. It's that time. Sweet dreams. Good night.